Alright, so in this video we're checking out a camera drone. This is from a company called Ruko. It's called the F11 Pro 2, and this is the one that has the 3-axis gimbal. I'll show you that here in a second. The previous generation of this one, I think it's just called the F11 Pro, does not have a gimbal. I think it's just like a fixed camera that uses electronic stabilization, so I definitely don't recommend that one if you want nice smooth footage. This one here is the updated version, just came out I think about 4 or 5 months ago, so a bit late to the review party as usual. Now, for those of you that already own a recent generation DJI drone, any of the minis, maybe the Air 2S, Air 3, Air 3S, something like that, I would recommend not getting this because pretty much what you have right now is already better than this. I think this company is targeting first-time buyers that maybe are a little bit skittish about going with DJI. You know, there's a lot of negativity surrounding the DJI brand, and some people would prefer going with a different brand when it comes to their GPS camera drones. In that case, you know, if you don't have anything and you're considering getting into GPS drones, but you don't want to buy a DJI, this one has potential. I think that the DJI drones are, in general, better than this model here, although it's kind of a in-between model in terms of like what category it fits into. So the pricing doesn't really work out that exact. It's not really an apples to apples type of comparison. And I'll talk about pricing a little bit later in detail, down in the a little bit later in the video, because that's a little bit too early to talk about that right now. But essentially, we're trying to fill in a niche category. So first off, this is a little bit bigger than your typical mini size drone. So it's not sub 250. So although the DJI mini drones are like 249 grams, this one's 357 grams with batteries. So it will require registration with the FAA if you're in the United States or whatever, you know, wherever country you're buying this at. You know, there'll probably be some regulations surrounding the weight and some sort of registration. And you will also need remote ID in this one as of, you know, now 2025. And this model does have the remote ID technology built in to the drone, which you can access via the app and do all your registration stuff before you go and fly it. So if you're wondering about all that, it's all included now these days in all the models that's required to be sold. So that is included. In terms of the size, it's a little bit bigger than your sort of your typical sub 250 mini drone, but it's not quite as big as, say, like a Air 2S or Air 3, Air 3S. It's a little bit, it's like I said, it's kind of in between, and the pricing kind of falls in between as well. Anyway, so let's talk about what we get in this package here. This is the one that I think is called the Fly More Combo, which has the extra battery and comes with a case. And so you get 2 batteries, and they're like this. They charge via USB-C. Where's the plug? Right there. It just charges right there. Very easy to charge up on a regular wall charger at like 5 volts. And this one is 7.7 volts, 24.64 amp hours, 3200 milliamp hours. It's a 2S battery. It's a pretty big capacity. 35 minutes of flight time per battery, so 70 minutes total. The other one is already in here. And then there's a little button here in the back here. It lights up, shows you the charge level. And very, very easy to do, and then just slide into the back. And there's a little button here to take the battery in and out. So yeah, get the drone, you get the controller, you get a manual, of course. Show a little bit of that here in a second. You get a disclaimer guide. Get a few cables here to connect the controller to your phone. So this is very typical. It's a USB-C on one side, the other side is going to be for other types of phones. So this one has a micro USB connection, this one has a lightning connector for your Apple, and then the one that's already on here is USB-C to USB-C. I already installed that onto the controller, and of course you use the smartphone screen with the Ruko app. The link is in the manual. Use a QR code, download the app, install it, and connect this up, and then you'll have video coming to the drone to the smartphone screen. You get a couple extra USB-C cables here. I think this is for charging the battery if you need it. And then you get a little bag for spare parts here. So a couple of extra gimbal sticks are included. There's, in case you lose those do unscrew. And then you have some spare screws for their propellers, and then this little mounting hardware here for the props. And then you get a bag of some spare props. Looks like you get 6 spare props, so they're probably mirrored here, so 6 total, and a screwdriver. So here's a look at the controller. Pretty standard. These little sticks that you unscrew, and then they come out over here. So if you want to store it in the case, you can just take the sticks off and then put them into the storage area. You have a screen here, shows you some basic data like distance and battery levels on the drone and the controller. You have 2 different speed levels for the drone. You can change here. You have a return to home button, power on button here. Over here is your takeoff and landing button. I think this one here is for compass calibration. And then the phone goes into this little holder here. And you can see where it kind of notches in there, and also down in here. And then the USB-C cable is in here, and and basically you pull that out and then put the phone in here, and then you plug in the phone on the side. Just have a couple of controls here on the top of the controller. You have this for the gimbal to adjust the angle, and then you have your photo button there and your video recording button here. So there's another USB-C port over here on this side. This is for charging the controller, and then the other one is inside there is actually for the data that goes to the smartphone. So make sure you keep those 2 straight. And then here is the back of the controller with some ventilation holes. All right, so taking a look at the drone, typical 2 propeller setup here. If you didn't look really closely, you would think this is a DJI drone. It has the same color scheme. Got some lights here in the front. This is the 4K camera, and there's some specs here on the front. So it's a 1/3.2 inch 8 megapixel sensor with a 75-degree field of view and an f2.0 aperture. So I will talk about the video quality a little bit later, but basically it is an 8 megapixel, very small sensor. In low light, you get a lot of noise. Of course, that's pretty standard. But again, they're trying to, this is sort of a budget class drone for what you get. So some of the things that they obviously cut costs on are the cheaper sensor on here. We'll talk about the video quality here in a second, but it is a full 3-axis gimbal for your pitch, your roll, and your yaw. And it is soft mounted there. So I flew this on a very, very windy day and got, the footage itself is very stable and smooth. So the gimbal does work. Of course, the arms, they just fold back like this here. You want to fold the back arms in first, and then the front arm back, because this little landing feet here get in the way. And then a battery comes in and out over here in the back with this little button. Just pop that out like that. And the little pins right there to connect it up. And then on this side over here is where you put in the micro SD card for recording the onboard video. There is an optical flow sensor here on the bottom. So if you are trying to fly this indoors or just low to the ground in general, this is what this is for, is it will keep it stable and kind of so it doesn't drift around. So if you don't have GPS lock, if you're indoors, for example, this will take over, but it only works up to a certain height. So after you get above about, I'd say maybe 10 feet, it's basically ineffective, and I don't think it actually operates beyond a certain altitude, because this little camera in the bottom here, which essentially is what it is able to make out details when you're too far off the ground. But for indoor flights, if you just want to use it for short indoor flights and you don't have GPS, then this does keep it stable indoors. All right, so I just want to show you the specs here in the manual. You can go ahead and pause the video if you want to read all this stuff. I did cover some of the things here, but yeah, so some of the highlights: maximum flight distance of 10,000 feet. So it's not quite as far as any DJI products, but for a beginner or someone just starting out in camera drones, it's more than adequate in my opinion. It has some maximum photo resolution there, and I think it's like 57 by 320. That's 8 megapixels. I think that's what that is. And then you're obviously for your video, it's 4K video maximum at 30 FPS. Now the bit rate on the video is a maximum about 40 megabits, so it does affect the video quality. We'll talk about that when I show you that in a second here. And here's the rest of the specs here. All right, so we'll get right into the flight footage here and talk about some of the features. So before every flight, you do have to calibrate the compass. It does sort of guide you in the app as to how to do that. It's pretty simple. Basically, you just rotate the drone on the horizontal axis until it tells you it's calibrated, and then turn it vertically and then rotate it vertically. And pretty basic, pretty simple, pretty standard for a lot of GPS camera drones, so nothing unusual there. Now, I did fly this in, again, very windy conditions. As you can see here, how the drone is just being pushed around all over the place. But the video footage, as you're going to see here, is quite smooth. So overall, pretty impressed that the gimbal works as well as it does. Now, again, here's the footage here. I'm just flying it around manually at this. Right now, it's like winter, or at least when I filmed this, it was winter, and the water park here is completely empty. I think there's some people working there. There's doing some maintenance and stuff like that. But just to give you an idea of what the video quality is like, I thought this area would be kind of interesting because the colors would be more saturated because it's very colorful, and some of these little water features or these little rides and stuff. And like I said before, it is 4K video, 30 FPS, but because it is a maximum bitrate of only 40 megabits, the image does appear to be a little bit soft. And especially, I think it's the combination of the lower bitrate plus the low megapixels. It's only 8 megapixels on the sensor. The image looks okay if you're not pixel peeping. So for those of you, again, if you already have a DJI drone, or if you're looking for something that's going to be for professional use, you probably are want to be looking elsewhere, because the video quality on here is, I would say, mediocre. It's okay. It's if you're just using it for social media, maybe some YouTube videos or Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, that kind of thing, maybe some TikTok videos, I think for those cases, perfectly fine for casual use, but I would not recommend this for professional drone video. Of course, for casual video looks nice. I mean, the colors are decent. There's a fair amount of contrast in the video. It's fairly processed. It's very typical for drones in this category. So, in terms of manual video features, etc., and professional video features, they don't exist. And there's no ND filters or anything of that kind of as well. So you're pretty much, what you get is what you get out of this camera. And for the most part, for people that are just starting out and don't really want to mess and fiddle around with settings, you'll get decent video out of this one. I think for first timers, it's good enough. But again, if you'd rather spend your money on something more professional, for better video quality, there's definitely alternatives out there, especially on the DJI side. But again, I think they're not targeting those people. Those people are already have a drone, or they're not interested in getting anything other than DJI. So they're really targeting people that are kind of looking at getting out of the DJI ecosystem, or don't want to get into the DJI ecosystem. So leave it at that. You guys can let me know what you think in the comments below. Anyway, there are a number of additional sort of flying features or automated features that are kind of built into this. They're not quite as refined or as sophisticated as the ones you'll find on DJI drones. So I think this company, Ruko, is previously, or maybe they're associated with or owned by a company called SEMA, which is a toy drone company. They're primarily a toy drone company. So maybe this Ruko is an offshoot brand. Maybe they're trying to branch out into more higher end type drones, which is, I think, what the goal of this model is, obviously, to get that, with a 3-axis gimbal on it. But the features on here, I didn't test all of them, but you'll see that they're kind of a work in progress. I'll show you a couple of quick examples here. Here's one where I just did the vertical video, and it doesn't actually rotate the camera like you would see in some other drones. Like, I think the Mini 4 Pro does the rotation of the actual camera to get the vertical video. It just cuts down the sensor and turns your 4K video into like 2.7K video in a vertical video format. And again, with the lower resolution and lower bitrate, it does make the video quality a little bit less than ideal when you're going to vertical video. So not something that I tested extensively, but all the video I saw, it did seem like it reduced the video quality when going to vertical video. There's another mode where it's called like fly around, where you're supposed to do an orbit around your spot, but instead of doing that, it basically just rotated the camera around in 360 degrees. And I'm not really sure why. I couldn't figure out if I was doing something wrong in the settings. As far as I could tell, everything was done correctly. But I think after I had looked at this and looked at this footage, I think I realized that maybe I needed to be away from my spot. I think I was a little bit too far above me or directly above me, and that's why I did that. So I may do further testing of that in the future, but it didn't seem like it was working as expected. And then the one feature that I mainly wanted to test was the follow me features. I think it's called GPS follow or something like that. And I think in the DJI world it's called active track, but it doesn't work in the same way. So what this does is it's a very basic GPS follow mode. So it just follows the GPS coordinates of the controller, which is going to be on your phone. And so in this example here, I'm just driving my car around this empty parking lot, and you can see that it's following the car. And if you're behind the car or on the side of the car or in front of the car, the footage seems relatively smooth, even given the the wind conditions and everything. However, when the drone has to do any kind of yaw motion, it does it in a very robotic, sort of jerky fashion in increments. So it will move and then it will stop, and then it'll see that, oh, the controller has moved again. So then, okay, I will yaw again and adjust a little bit more, and then stop, and then, oh, it moved again. Okay, I'll move again and rotate some more. So you see this in the yaw axis. It needs a firmware update for the yaw axis. Now they told me that they are working on that, but I haven't seen any firmware updates since I spoke with them last. So I'm not sure if they're ever going to actually fix this or not. It does. Whenever the drone has to yaw and when it's in this follow mode, it does it in a very robotic fashion where it stops and starts and stops and starts, which is quite. It doesn't look very good in my opinion. And again, I'm kind of looking at this from someone that's used for more professional drones. So maybe this is not a fair comparison. Again, you guys can let me know in the comments below if I'm being a little bit too harsh on this, because this is more or less a high-end toy drone. So obviously for something like that, maybe this is amazing. No, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. I'm not sure if they're going to be putting any more enhancements or improvements into these GPS features. Well, that I'm not really sure. You'll have to contact the manufacturer because they haven't really told me themselves. Now, in terms of the pricing, as I mentioned earlier, I think this kind of falls in between like the mini category of drones and the little, like the other category drones like the Air 2S, Air 3S, which are above sub 250. And if you compare this one, I think it's going to be around $400. It is closer to the price of like the mini drones, but bigger, of course. So it's going to have like, better wind handling capabilities, etc. So it's going to be more like the Air 2S, the Air 3S, and those drones are closer to $1,000. So I guess if you consider the category this is in, it's, I guess, a much lower cost point. But when you consider that the DJI mini drones are also around that $400 price point or lower, like some of the really low end ones, like I think the Mini 4K does also do 4K 30 FPS video, and I think it's currently right now like around $300. So, and it's sub 250, so you don't have to register or get your remote ID. So there's pros and cons on this. If you want the bigger drone, you don't mind registering, you don't care about about remote ID, but you want the bigger drone with the bigger props for better wind handling. It does come in at a lower price point than the Air 3S, but it's a higher price point than the mini drone. So it's kind of in between, as I said earlier. Anyway, that's pretty much it for this video. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'll put a link down in the video description if you guys want to check it out. And yeah, that'll do it for this one. Talk to you guys in the next video.